And here we go.
There we go.
It's rolling.
We are rolling.
For the first time in quite a while. What do you got there? Is that some little wine, little Chardonnay, or
A little water, actually.
water?
Yeah. Hydrate before you dihydrate during this pandemic. That's my motto. Yeah.
It is only like 2:30 as well, but quarantine time, there is no. A lot of people have laid the claim down that there's no such thing as 5 o'clock anymore.
It's 5 o'clock all the time, everywhere, because everybody's afraid of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm just sticking to water during all this because I only have so much money, and who knows when everything's gonna get back up and running. So
yeah, that's true. You're thinking ahead, as you should be, of someone in the early 20s going into the arts. I think I've bought a couple cases of beer already, but
huh. Okay. Well, everybody's got to do their own thing during all this. This is a strange and crazy time.
It is. I have been moderating, I will say, which is extremely important. I don't want to last thing you want to do is weaken your immune system right now.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say I've been moderating, which is extremely rare, and I was like, oh, Joey.
I'm not a big drinker. I mean, I like drinking, but I'm not I can't do binges. Even a couple drinks. Some people can do that where they, especially in college, where they have a couple drinks every day or something, but
yeah.
And not actually get drunk or anything. That would be crazy. If you're getting drunk every day in college, that's
I've met a couple people who could do it. I actually throughout college you and I went, I think, to one or two places together on the weekend. But since college, I've actually given it up.
Nice.
This is a lot of it is, just personal preference, and then some of it is financially speaking, this is also, again, that planning ahead sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I don't pay my water bill here, so I can have as much of that as I want.
Yeah. But I thought the same thing, and then I found out we just have a fixed rate on our water that's included into our rent, which is way more than you'd actually pay for water. So that kind of pissed me off. But
you know what? I probably pay for my water then, but
you might. Nothing's truly free. But that's still the logic still applies. Drink as much as you can, because if you're going to pay for it anyway, it's
exactly
logic.
Right. Oh man.
Let me turn up my TV a little bit. I can hear you.
Okay. I feel like I'm just how they have political correspondence on television? I feel like that's what I'm doing right now, like a remote correspondence for you.
Yeah, that's true. It does it feels to me like hanging out with one of your buddies when you're in middle school and you really can't go anywhere because you don't have a car. So you're just Skyping all the time.
That's fair.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Never mind.
Are we good?
Yeah, I was just trying to turn it up a little bit so I could hear you a little louder on the TV, but it'll be loud enough in the recording.
If I lean into my microphone, does that help?
Yeah, a little bit. It might freak people out, and just put your forehead right against the camera. Yeah. That'll be the brand of this show now. Now that it's moved virtually, when we record the podcast, you just have to be right here on the camera.
Yeah, right as close as you can be. Yeah. It's really muffled, but clear microphone tone, and making sure the top of your head is tilting toward the camera, so your mind's actually wide open. That's
exactly. Yeah. Show them how wide open your mind is.
Exactly.
Oh man. Okay, well, I get that's not the exact topic. Alcohol consumption is not the topic we're dealing with.
None of it was. That's all right.
But it can be.
It can be. Oh Lord.
No, it might fit in somehow. Well, that was one thing I want to ask you, because the topic. So go ahead and say what the topic is.
So the topic today, the one that we've kind of landed on, is talking about the way that, or the impact, the opinion, the way that correspondence via the internet, via social media, via any sort of communication devices has really changed things, affected our lives, affected lives in general. What we think of that, that's really it's more of an opinion than like a let's look up the facts on that sort of conversation that I'm open to having. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I doubt you won't have any. You'll probably, especially if you're someone. I think people who tend to think about that stuff in in detail usually perceive it to be like a more massive influence than someone who's just overlooking it. So,
right.
and I tend to be one of those people too. So you wanting to bring up that topic
Mhm.
makes me think we'll probably agree on more things than not, especially with, because as soon as you bring that up, I'm thinking immediately like I definitely tend to go more of the direction of the extreme of thinking it's revolutionized our the way we interact with each other. Maybe it's
Okay.
not changed everything, but
Right.
it's the most. I definitely think it's the most, the biggest advance we've ever made in communication since like probably writing language itself. Like I can't think of anything that's allowed us to communicate more differently and more accessibly than technology, like computer technology specifically.
Right.
Obviously, you can break it down to any kind of technology.
Hmm.
Um,
People were saying the same thing when the telegraph was invented, though.
that is
Like,
true. Yeah, I
man,
guess
these dots
that was
and
the newest.
dashes.
Yeah, that's. I guess we've always kind of been making progress. We didn't really fall behind and just never do anything after writing language. But
Right.
even the telegraph, like this seems like a step towards a direction, which I guess computing is kind of like the kind of more to it can be not to blame, what's the word, credited for making that change to the world more so,
Right.
and just our ability uh, um, to process information quicker and access it more effectively or efficiently.
Hmm.
But I I think that it's, yeah, it's strange because I feel like there's nothing, while the telegraph or a telephone was something that that was more of an extension of something that we already um, had created. It
Right.
just allowed us to do it quicker. And I guess this is doing it too, but I feel like this could be the first step into really changing the way we think about it. And like, because there's still so many limitations that language has in itself,
Yeah.
and talking to each other. There's time, there's a timeliness to it that some people can communicate quicker than other people and communicate
Right.
more important things or a higher amount of things in less time than other people. Uh, so I think to me, technology is the first thing that we were the biggest thing since our ability to come up with symbols and letters and words that denote some sort of meaning, or denote some sort of meaning, that we this could be something that completely changes that. And maybe not completely, I think it'll be an extension still, but
Right.
I don't
I
know.
don't.
This, you've already got my gears turning for sure, but I think I definitely fall in the area of thinking that it's a revolution, and it's been more. It's a bigger. It's done more to change things than it has left things the same, I guess.
Right.
But what do you
Well,
think?
my big thing is, I mean, it always feels like there was, you could imagine, or someone could imagine where we were headed. So like we go from, just written letters and post to like telegraph to or telephone to telegraph. I don't know which one was which. I think it was telegraph and telephone. Um, and then we jump into, the modern age where instead of having like a party line of people all on the same like literal wired channel, and you couldn't have a phone call if you're next to your neighbor and they're on the phone because you're on the same line, to like individual house phones and lines. And then we jump to from that to the game changer was internet connectivity, like putting satellites up into space and being able to communicate like across that medium, and literally start communicating around the world just by picking up a device. I
Uh-huh.
don't know where that goes next. Like, even if you're like someone who believes that we're going to get to, and I'm not saying that I don't, I'm just not sure where I stand on it. Someone who believes we're going to get to like occupying other planets, and even if you're calling, like making planet to planet, like planetary calls or whatever we're going to eventually call them if they exist, it's still satellite communication. It's still like Wi-Fi or like enhanced radio signal based, or like anything that like you pick up this device, and it gets that done for you. Maybe it's got to be more high tech. I think if we end up going to where we can communicate as one individual on one planet to another individual on another planet, if that's ever a thing, the devices are going to have to be way bigger than what we have right now. Like it's going to basically feel like the building of the computer again, where it's like the mainframe is huge as opposed to, and then eventually we'll get to that like microcosm, microchip level.
Well, that brings up a point that I don't really understand. I mean, I know the science somewhat, the basic science of how satellites work and whatnot, but why is it that when we had cell phones, why did they have to start out so big? And does it have something to do with the processing power to be able to make that, or why would they have to be such a big phone if we were interplanetary to communicate at least?
I feel like, first of all, I got to disclose that, I studied theater in college. So like I'm an expert on any of this.
I'm asking you to break down this science of radio waves here.
Yeah, there are all these things that I'm super qualified to talk about. And
exactly.
Like, radio waves. Tell me about them.
A film major and a theater major getting together to talk about how phones, interplanetary telephones, are going to work in the next 1,000 years.
Exactly. Like, I didn't know we were going to do a deep dive right into the technology of this, but I guess I sent it rolling down this path.
You're the spokesperson now. You're the figurehead. You have to have an answer.
I'm the figurehead for interplanetary communication. So whenever we get a president in office who's ready to deal with that,
this might be your office. You can act this.
This might be my expertise. Yeah.
The motto of this administration is putting unqualified people into positions where you're supposed to be an expert.
Yeah. You know what? I really feel like I shouldn't be the one discussing this with you. I feel like whoever is the commander of Space Force is the person who should be like talking to you about this. But like, to really try to answer the question with my absolutely like zero expertise on it, I think the size of the device had to do with the inability to understand the technology and as intricately as we could.
Okay.
Initially, so it's like we're just trying to make sure that it is something that is compact enough to where it's not an inconvenience, but also has all of the necessary parts. I almost said organisms, but like parts inside of it. Because you think about those old phones and they were huge and they had to have the wire, not the wire, whatever
the cord or the antenna or whatever.
Yeah, the antenna, and then you'd pick it up and it'd be your whole face and your whole hand. Whereas now we've got no antenna. We just operate off of like, I think it's the enhancement of not only the phone technology, and like the advancement to wireless. The development of wireless. I was gonna say wireless Fi because nobody really knows what Fi stands for, but that's just, I think it's like optical fiber kinetics or something like that. But the idea that, I say nobody knows, and somebody's gonna correct me eventually and be like, no, people know. But the idea that like the technology, when you have that first boom, it's like the thing has to be big because we have such a small understanding of it. And as we get a more intricate understanding of the device, we're able to make it smaller and make it more compact. And that's why these things run off of like microchips and memory cards now instead of like cords and antennas.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's good because that was bullshit. Like I just made most of it.
No, I think well, you explained the practicality of like using how we've moved from like the cords to chips, and that makes sense. And like now that computers have got way more complex, and they didn't even really. What was the first? I think the first computer was like in the 50s or 40s or 50s, right? Wasn't it? It was Alan Turing, right? Didn't he build a computer for Germany or something?
Something like that. But the interesting part of it is that like where they actually like drew the name from were the people who were doing the calculations that computers now do.
Right.
Like that's always the intriguing part to me. I'm like, so computer is just like, that's why everybody's afraid of the like technology eventually becoming like having its own self-identity, because like we
Mm-hmm.
took we took this title and this process that people can do. It just takes a lot of effort, put it in a
Right.
machine. But yeah, I think it was like 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s.
Okay. So,
That's
I guess my point being, there was like the telephone and the telegraph preceded that, and
oh yeah.
they weren't computers. And like now, computers do have some sort of, through chips and
Hmm.
memory cards and things like that. We've kind of paired computers with phones. And
Right.
I actually heard someone talking about that recently, saying like we're getting to the point where laptops and cell phone, or computers and cell phones, are same different shades of the same color or whatever, different
Right.
yeah, they're the same thing in their essence. They just have like a different model or something like that.
The fact that you can buy an iPad and decide whether you just want Wi-Fi or cellular capabilities, like there is officially no difference between
I didn't
like
even
the
know
two
that. So
mediums.
you can, wow, you can connect and use it as a phone and everything in the same way. Is there?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I've been looking into getting a new computer, and so I was like looking at all my options, and I was
Uh-huh.
looking at iPads, and it was like the Wi-Fi option. I'm a cheap bastard, so like the Wi-Fi option for the one that I could afford was like $4.99, and then it said Wi-Fi and cellular $7.99.
Huh.
Like, and it was, and I was like, okay, so it's like basically a cell phone plan, or it can operate off of cellular towers. It's so
That's crazy.
it's outside of my wheelhouse of being able to fully comprehend it. Plus, I can't afford it, so I'm still gonna have. I think I'm still gonna have two devices no matter what, but they're
Right.
pretty much one and the same, which is nuts because I would never use them for the same things.
Yeah.
Like,
So they're getting so complex that they have features. They share features with other things we're already used to using. That it's like there's no practicality as to why you would, until I guess you do, until
right.
like your phone breaks or something in an important moment, and you're like, oh shit, at least I have my iPad cell phone now.
Exactly. Right.
But
And I even think about like if you want to even converge some more on technology and the way that people communicate with each other. And, I have my opinions on whether it's good or bad that I'm sure we'll get into here shortly. But like
uh-huh.
the idea that we're able to do this live and record it, and we can see each other, we can hear each other. It's, if delayed, it's very slight. Um,
Unless it's a
but
connection
then
issue.
this is gonna be published. Yeah, unless there's connection issues. Yeah. Um, but then it's going to be published as a podcast, which is just this higher art form of talk radio in this new age. Like, and then people will stream that on their phones or on their laptops, and it doesn't ever get to a radio. It's this thing where it's like, it's not just, I guess my point, like where I'm going with all this is like, we can look at it and be like, oh, the computer and the phone are converging. And it's like, man, we've been here. Like film was never available in your home, and now it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like television changed the game on that. And then suddenly like we slapped the computer on top of it, and we're like, your TV can get Wi-Fi and you can just stream things directly in
Uh,
to your house. And like I don't know anybody who has a radio anymore, to be totally honest. So like
yeah.
podcasting is the primary form of like being the kind of the art of listening to and absorbing that kind of information. And
Uh-huh.
unless you're in your car and your
That's
auxiliary
what's.
cord is not there with you, you're not really listening to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts if you really stop to think about it, and it's kind of freaky. Not like pandemic freaky, but still freaky.
Yeah. More, well, at least not yet.
Right.
It just shows you, yeah, it's all happening very quickly though, and I think that's why people do get. I mean, I'm not extremely. This is kind of a segue of a bit, but by comparison of just large scale things, like big technological advancements over the last 100 years or even 50 years, it just is. it's mind-boggling. It really is, and that's why I can understand people who, I mean, like Elon Musk is the like the leading, at least he's the most vocal and most famous thinker that
Mm-hmm.
is in like just full support of the idea of simulation theory. And
Right.
I think it's things like that. It's things like looking at video games and our ability to just completely, we're getting to the point where we're able to almost replicate the likeness of our own experience through what the games that we create. I
Right.
can totally understand why people start to think in that sort of way that seems like thousands of years ahead of what thinking should be. You know, like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
hear that and they can't even wrap their heads around the idea of it because it seems so ridiculous, which there's a level of irony to that with most people, because you grab anyone and they probably, most, unless they're truly like a realist, which there's flaws in, I think, being an absolutist about that as well. But most people you pull off the side of the road or pull off the sidewalk and ask, tell me something that is a little out there that you believe in, I guarantee most people have an answer. But that's definitely
Right.
a big one, simulation theory, that a lot of people will raise their eyebrows at you for. But
Mm-hmm.
when I think about stuff like that, and when I think about what you're talking about of just the merging of all of these different forms of replicating the way humans interact and all the various ways we do it, the fact that it's all consolidated into this, it's all becoming a part of they're all getting on the same ship here and setting sail. It just makes you wonder
Mm-hmm.
what does that turn into after that, especially when there's been a constant evolution ever since we came up with these ideas to their merging. Like, where do, yeah, it's especially this topic. Like, you think of like robots and or simulation theory video games, you kind of see a direction it could go, like hypothetically. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
could become AI, and it could be, we could live peacefully amongst them, or they could find no purpose for us and go full Westworld on our ass. Or
Yeah.
you have like video games where people are opting out of life to just live in their VR world. But I
Right.
can't really imagine, now that everything's merged, I guess I don't, because what you were kind of saying, it made me, I'm guessing you're thinking the same thing, is now that we've reached this place, is this the ceiling? Is this where it stops?
Right.
Is it
Like,
just,
where do we go?
yeah, does it just become a further extension if we do become interplanetary? Like, because then it's just the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. We're just finding ways to do it like with a greater distance. But
Right.
how do we merge it anymore? Or how do we create something new from this that isn't just something else? I don't know. It does seem like some sort of ceiling that we've
Mm-hmm.
maximized, or the ability to do, and it's great. I mean, this is the best time to. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions of it. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
There's 50% of stuff I hate about the internet and hate about social media specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But the other 50% definitely outshines the, I'd say maybe it's 60-40, honestly,
Okay.
because I still use it every day and I love it and I appreciate that. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful to have it rather than not having it, I think,
Right.
um, which is a biased perception because I was born with it. And I might be telling myself that just because so I don't rationalize abandoning all technology and hiding in a bunker for the rest of my life.
Right. That's fair. Do
I don't
you,
want to, don't want to
I
be
have to
that
ask.
guy.
That's fair. I mean, you got to look for it, but like, I do have to ask, like, do you remember like the dial-up tone? Like, do you remember the dial-up tone when it wasn't the Wi-Fi, when it would be like you couldn't be on the internet because your parents were on the phone, or you couldn't be on the phone because somebody was on the internet?
I is it
Oh, that's a no. You're making me feel old.
that's how much older are you than me?
I feel like 2 years, 3 years, maybe.
Are you 25?
I'm gonna be 25 this year.
Okay, so you're like 2.5 or something like
Yeah.
that. I'll be 23 this year at some
Okay.
point, maybe. We'll see. I think my lungs are in good shape as far as I know. Good enough shape.
Right. See, because that's the stuff when you're like, because when you said the phrase, I was born with it, I immediately went to like, I remember those moments where it was like, I had 30 minutes total in a day that I could be on the internet because my parents didn't want the phone line occupied, and there were 3 kids. Like there were 3 of us in our house, and to get on the internet, I had to click a button, and then it would do the like and like the tone would just, and it would just take up the phone line. And so like even going back to like things converging, right? It's now like you can talk on the phone and while you're having a conversation with somebody, surf the internet without them knowing. Like we've evolved to the point where this is both great. Like this is a fantastic development. Like you were saying, social media, I'm kind of 60-40 on as well. I'm more like 70-30 just because it does, like, there are some days where I'm like, I need to get off of this. Like, it's causing me so much anxiety. We've evolved to the point where focusing on a singular task, I think, is being lost to this technology a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you said something else in there that I was like, oh, it's a good thought, but it's kind of starting to escape me. You were talking about the idea of like how we've made so many thousands of years of advancement and like simulation theory. First of all, if we're living in a simulation, like my honest opinion, if we're living in a simulation, currently there's a virus in the system, but like, and there has been since like 2015.
Or it's a sick person simulating it.
Right. Which in that case, like, whose simulation is this really? And why are the rest of us questioning it if we're part of it? But the second part of it is like we've made so many feels like so many thousands of years of advancement so quickly that I think about just even being the film, TV like nerd that I am. I think about sci-fi and where it's like they used to, like having somebody instantly on your screen being able to talk to you, that used to be a thing of science fiction, and now it happens. And so I'm like, when you're like, where do we go next? I'm like, I don't really know. Like being able to have like a Palm Pilot type of thing is what it usually looks like, and then a little hologram of somebody pops up. Like that's the next in terms of communication. But we've focused almost strictly on communication advancement, which is so strange because over the course of human history, it was almost like all just kind of level playing field in terms of advancement, and everything was advancing at the same rate. And then in the past 50 years, communication just skyrocketed past other technology. Like, I think of automobiles and how we should already be at energy efficient and like carbon neutral automobiles and advancements in the like travel industry, and we're not.
Yeah, our priorities are pretty fucked up.
Yeah, our priorities and that takes me into this route of what my opinion is, because as great as this is, like us being able to do this at a distance while everything's happening out there, like us being able to even just send quick messages on Facebook to set all this up as we're trying to get ready for it, like that's great. But it's also kind of a symptom of our world is becoming like everybody is performing, everybody needs to see each other all the time. Everybody's like, look at me. And that's why
definitely I see where you're going with that. It just that it's kind of it can be very dangerous to inflating your ego and while also making you more insecure, which I feel like personally any inflation of the ego is usually going to have repercussions that make you insecure in the long run or subconsciously. But it also creates like this codependency, the fact that you have to be performing all the time or be in communication with someone like if this quarantine, and it has happened before, I feel like the quarantine now is probably more difficult for people to deal with in their heads than it ever was back when they had to quarantine and for other diseases back in the day before the technological advancements. Just so ironic because our biggest, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know whether that's it makes me wonder what that says about us if we or actually, I think it makes it clearer to me that people do understand that there is like a level of arbitrariness to being your online self. If you're only depending on how much time you're doing that, I think you can get closer to a more genuine. I think podcasts are a perfect way of maintaining that sincerity. But there's a lot of traps you can fall into, and that everybody does in other aspects of social media, like posting and and your motive behind making the certain posts that you made, whatever the content is saying itself, or if you're sharing something. It's things like that really create this issue. So it's weird, but it's weird that people are so anxious that they can't get out of their houses and interact in like a personal way anymore. Like that option's been stripped it from them, yet they were taking it for granted in a very problematic way before any of this. So I wonder, hopefully there can be a moment of reflection that we realize, and not only realize, but take an active. Most people I talk to are willing to admit the problems of social media or the internet in their daily lives and how they're abusing it, and that they want to get towards a healthier way of doing that, and while still being able to interact with it without just giving it up completely. Most people that I know that address that don't make changes. I mean, I myself included, I think I'm very vocal about them, and I think from the average person, I usually at least take strides in my life. I'll talk about it and then try and change something, whether I'm consistent or not with that is up for debate, and it depends on who it's relative to who you're talking to and what they think of your own personal interaction with it. I think there are things that are objectively unhealthy, like talking shit or trolling and just starting arguments that aren't even conversations type deal. Like those are objectively bad, but there's other things too that kind of blur the lines, and people are still like trying to cope with, of understanding whether it's making them more anxious or playing into their ego. So no, I totally agree. I'm still figuring out where I stand on that. And I've tried both extremes. I mean, I've given up social media I gave it up for 2 years. And I tried to have points like where if I tried to remember something or think of something or understand something, I tried not to just give in every time to Googling it, which it's a great resource, but there's something, a great idea you said is the fact that it does give you this access, but when is it too much to where it's making you lazy or making you multitask too much to where you can't even focus on one thing that really requires your undivided attention? I think taking steps to maybe not search every little thing, that will train your mind to work for it a little more. And I think there's advantages and benefits to having that kind of approach to using it. So I think it's like most things. It's you got to find a balance, but balance is it's that simple, but the process is complex to reaching that. To that simplicity.
Yeah, it's and especially for people who grew up with it, like it's finding that balance is almost impossible when you're not able to take stock of the amount that it affects you. Because I kind of there are a couple things you said in there that's like, oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Podcast being one of the most genuine forms of, like, it is in this weird way, I don't think of it as a social media, but it is, because you're opening up, you're sharing, you're making your thoughts known, you're showing people a part of your life, depending if it's like just 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, like you're showing people your thought process, at least, or at least letting them hear it. But even then it is still kind of a performance. So it's like it's this weird balancing act of what genuine, like how genuinely comfortable am I with not only being myself, but being myself across all platforms, across all measures of my life, areas of my life, regardless of what's in front of me. Which is like brought me into this thought process as you were talking. I was like, see, one of the positives, I think, and this also brings me to a question that I was told I have to ask you, but one of the positives, um, I think, of being able to hop on Google or having all this access to social media, to podcasts, is like you have these people who previously we've put on pedestals, like celebrities and politicians and athletes. Like you have these people and you can just hear their genuine, like actual struggles, what's actually happened in their lives. You don't personally get to know them, but you personally get to know what has affected them, which is different than that like wall that was put up between like
Mm-hmm.
the us of the regular people and the celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
Because the biggest thing, and leads into the question that I have to ask you, is like I'll be watching a TV show or a movie with Alice and my girlfriend, and she'll say, oh, like we watched How to Get Away with Murder recently, and then we were watching the movie It's Kind of a Funny Story, and she was like, oh, there's Annalise Keating. And I was like, her name's Viola Davis. Like, that's the actress's name. Her name is Viola Davis. And and then we had this little conversation about how, you know, they kind of come off as like when I watch something, I register the actor, the actress, or the person first. Even if I'm trying to watch it and buy them as the character, I register the person because I know that at any moment I can pick this phone up and look up anything about them while I'm watching this thing and find out like where they were born or how old they are. Like it gives me access to so much information. But also then like being the nerd that I am about that stuff, I just like to like be able to recall, oh, this person's in that thing, or this is the name of that actor and sort of thing. I don't know if you do that. That's the question. I was wondering if you do that too as a film guy specifically, where you can just pull people or facts or things out of thin air that you previously like. It lends itself to the conversation because it's like, and if you can, is it because you at one point picked up this device, or is it because it's like this is what I want to do with my life,
Yeah.
or is it like
Yeah.
this is a person?
I think to me that's kind of similar to the overlap as far as I know. I mean, I think you'd have to do a study of it, like a wide study of it, to say whether like how people react to it, like the norm, because I could be an outlier, but I think the way I see it and the way I try to that or the way I see it in the way that I do it, and similar to the way that you do it, is because I do the same thing. I've grown less obsessive about that, just because I feel the older you get, the more awareness you gain for the finite or not, yeah, or for the limited amount of time that you have to do things. And I'm getting to a point where I'm realizing all these interests I have, whether it's film or podcasting or music. And since I've really, like the last year, I've tried to really, movies, music, and podcasts have been pretty much what I've consumed myself with in any free time or any time I've had to work as well, since I'm going to school for it. But I don't have as much time to do that with movies, or I spend less time doing it. Whereas in high school, I was always, when I first got into movies, that was the only thing I was extremely passionate about. And I wanted to know every actor, every director, every writer, those were the top three things that I like love about movies too. So that was, and those are usually the people that get the most famous too. So there's a lot more than that you can learn about, and more information on those people that you can learn about. Like there's probably I guarantee if we pull up the Wikipedia page for Viola Davis or for Leonardo DiCaprio, it's going to be a lot longer, and there's going to be a wider range of information and weird fucking trivia on them than there would be for like Emmanuel Lubezki, the cinematographer, or like, I mean, Roger Deakins isn't a great example because he's like a famous one, but still, even by comparison, that just goes to show like actors are usually put on a higher pedestal of people wanting to learn trivia about those people because of their status and the way we associate them with what it means to be a person and what it means to be famous and whatnot. So I'm drifting off a little here, but to answer your question, I think it's kind of like nurturing and naturing. It's a little bit of both, because if I were born in the 60s and I were obsessed with film, like plenty of people were, they have a certain amount of technology that allows them to gain insight to that. So there were still
Right.
stars and things like that. It's just like now there's more access, and there's more potential for learning, but there's also more potential for getting distracted, because what information is good information? Does it really help you to know what model Leonardo DiCaprio is dating now, and like what model he broke up with and why, and all of those things, like the BuzzFeed shit,
Yeah.
Not to totally shit on BuzzFeed. I'm sure there's a couple articles I could pick in their time to where I was like, that was kind of entertaining and worth my time. But a lot of them are it's clickbait. I mean, it's not like fake news clickbait, but it's clickbait. It's stuff that's trying to consume your time, a considerable amount of it. Like, I don't know, like I'm obsessive. I'm most obsessive now about how I spend my time. And I do waste a considerable amount of it too, but I'm conscious of it. And that those are the things, something like that would make me anxious to feel like I'm just wasting time. And things like that with technology definitely do that. But it's weird. It's a hard line to walk, because there is the nature in me that is interested in this and wants to learn, some fun facts about my favorite actors, and because they're cool talking points, and I think people are interested in, and there's certain people that are more interesting to me in the entertainment industry than others, and like for everybody, and I bond over those topics. It's weird. It's like you can bond with a friend of yours or even a complete stranger over your shared appreciation for a certain artist, and
another complete stranger.
Exactly. It's it's so strange. Like they're not even in the room, and it's like they're connecting you. It's weird. It's bizarre, but that's becoming more and more common and more random too, because it's like it's not just like, oh, did you see that movie with this person in it? Like, it was a masterpiece that made this big old difference. It could be as simple as like, did you see that TikTok or that Vine or that whatever of this person of like fucking what's the one of Leonardo DiCaprio walking his turtle? You know how many times I've seen that? It's memed. It's like it's a picture. It was something that just started as like a celebrity picture of like paparazzis, and now it's a fucking meme. And it's just like things you can bond over something as trivial as that, and that's where it's harder for me to draw the line of so if it is nature and nurture, how much of it is being nurtured by this device?
Right.
Because now I'm looking at it, I'm spending who knows how long seeing pictures, even if it's seconds. Like, I mean, it gets to a point where you're wasting time thinking about the waste of time, but it does make you, I do think it is important to reflect on. I saw a pie chart one time that my buddy from high school shared on Instagram that kind of like a general breakdown of what you should spend your time doing, whether it's like working, meditating, or reflecting on things in life. And I think it was like 10% of your day should be spent reflecting on things in life. And I think that's one of the things good to reflect on, because and not spend too much time, just touch in really quick each day and be like, how much am I doing this? And like, we're being self-aware enough to identify when you're doing something that feels like it could be a waste of time and you're not really sure, realizing how it affects you and why you're doing that. And if it is, make the change. And I think I do that a good amount. I don't think I never seek out. That's part of the reason I don't have TikTok. I totally understand like people. I understand people using TikTok and wanting to and being a part of it.
I do not.
You do not.
It's just Vine the musical.
We disagree.
It's literally Vine the musical. That's all it is. Okay. Here we go. Listen.
Technology's brought us to TikTok.
All of this brought us to TikTok. Jesus. And that's how I feel about it. All like that statement, all of this brought us to TikTok, period. Jesus, period. Like, that's how I feel.
What have we done? We've gone mad with Bauer.
It's just like, it's the idea that TikTok to me, since we're talking about technology, I feel like it's relevant.
Fucking TikTok.
TikTok. Oh, we're gonna talk about TikTok.
He's gonna have one soon. His Trump media is gonna be on TikTok. It's a perfect platform. It's a perfect platform for him.
No, because it's run by China. See, that's like, he'd never do it.
That's
But
true.
here's
Unless it were
my
in secret.
unless we're in secret. You're right. My thing is TikTok, because like, okay, Facebook, it's like people have no awareness of their like of what their words can mean, because it's you post something and then you get in an argument and it's about religion or politics, and that's what it's about. Like, um, Twitter, people have a complete awareness of what their words can mean, and they make it as sharp as they can in 280 characters. Like, that's it.
Like, this is all I
Instagram,
got.
it's like what?
I was just saying that's they think of it. They're like, this is all I got. I got 280 characters to
Exactly.
capture the essence of my brain.
Exactly. And it's all cliche and horrible, but also sometimes great, and Lin-Manuel's an angel. But like, then you have Instagram, which is just like, here's the life you should think that I have. Like, let me just show you what you think, what I think you want to see. And even the moments where it's like, I'm gonna be real and like post something really real and really deep on Instagram. It's like, no, you're not.
It's hard
Like,
to do that without coming across as attention seeking in a very, I don't know what the word is, cheesy or just
yeah,
disingenuine
you're
way, you
still
know?
crafting.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're still crafting the specific narrative and choosing, like, here's my worst selfie and I'm going to post it. It's like, no, this
Uh-huh.
probably isn't your worst. Like, let's be
Yeah, you
totally
can do
honest.
worse. Make like a crazy face or something.
Right. But then, like, Snapchat is like, eh, I'm never going to understand it, and I'm never going to want to understand it. It's basically for teenagers to be
You
like,
sound like a boomer.
yeah, I do. I do. I sound horrible about this. But now to TikTok, okay? Listen. I understand that, everybody should create the content that they want to create as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. That's kind of where I stand as an artist, as a creator. I think TikTok is the display of what I wanted to talk about today, which is like the impact of technology as communication, because TikTok doesn't really communicate anything. Like, Snapchat has and like all of these other platforms that I've mentioned have these like messaging features, or like you can like get in touch with people really easily, and it's not just about like entertainment, or but TikTok feels like it's about entertainment and advertising, and then but which is fine, because that's also television and film, that's like kind of what we do. But
But
with a
even in that, I'll just to not sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
just
go ahead.
to kind of interject something to support that. It like
Mhm.
although we are involved in that, I would definitely consider us to be people that are also of the opinion that it's important to think about the effects of that. And when you're excessively entertaining or excessively advertising, like there should be, that's not usually the greater point to work. And for some people it is. I think you do need some people that are just purely entertaining.
Right.
You can have all of it, but you can't only have entertainment and escapism, because
Right.
then there's nothing to be gained other than just jerking yourself off, and that's
Right.
just jerking off your entertained the part of your, it's jerking off the part of your brain that is entertained. It's or maybe it's
Did you
stimulating the
want
part of your brain that gets stimulated when you jerk off.
did you want to just say jerking off one more time, just to make sure
Yeah,
that it's in the podcast?
to
Like,
make it clear that I'm talking about that.
yeah. See, you hit the nail on the head though, not with the jerking off, but with the idea that like
I think I did. I think the jerking off was the pinnacle of
right. No, but the idea that there's an absolute lack of, because you want to talk about lack of awareness of like scope of, you call it the scope of practice. That's kind of what they call it in the medical community, where it's like, what are you capable of, and what do your capabilities then, how do they affect other people, not only in the same industry, but also affect your patients. And I think that as like professional artists have the ability, because they they ingrain so much about, like, if you go to school for it, if you don't go to school for it, you start to understand your craft and what kind of impact your work can have. And what TikTok is a complete lack of that awareness and accountability. Like that's how I feel about it. At least
Yeah.
people can disagree. And the reason that it's like in that ballpark is because that's, if you're looking at how you can release free creations into the void that is the internet, and like have them be a spectacle or have them be really amateur hour, I feel like TikTok is that thing where it's like, this is where kids and teenagers are starting now, like, and creating stuff, as opposed to like making home videos and like filming with their own camera at home. They're dancing, and I don't really know what TikTok is, to be totally honest. I'm basically a boomer on this, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just a bunch of dances and like lip sync type of videos and like front facing camera comedy entertainment. There's nothing innately wrong with that, unless you recognize that they're like, unless you don't recognize like what effects you can have. And I was told, now I'm starting to feel like, oh yeah, I am becoming an old person. Like, I was told by someone that like there's popular TikTok going around where they would do like, they would sweep somebody, like somebody would jump in the air and they would sweep their legs out from underneath them, and the person would just hit the floor and it'd be like, ha ha ha, laughing, laughing, laughing. And people are like breaking their bones from doing this because they're doing it incorrectly, which like which like, yeah, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not trained in stage combat. This isn't a thing that there's no correct way to do this.
We've come full circle. That was what YouTube started as, right? We're cat videos and pranks of people getting fucking cracked open and breaking shit.
And now we're back to it. But YouTube like grew up and gained this accountability, kind of, not in the company, but just the like what they release, kind of. But now it's just, we're back to square one, and there's this like really immature platform to share things. And I mean, I don't know how many people listen to your show, so I could probably get like some hate mail for saying this, but like, it's truly how I feel. Just the genuine, like, this is where I think there's so much where it's great, where it's like we can communicate. Technology has brought us so far. And even in the entertainment industry, it's like, we're like, I can stream musicals during this quarantine in directly to my laptop, and you better believe that I'm doing it. But like, then also you've got this young people are so influential. And I remember it was so tough for me when I didn't make it in my friend's top 10 on MySpace. Like if that hurt my feelings, and that was just a ranking system, if that hurt my feelings, then like not getting enough likes, not getting enough follows, like there needs to be some level of accountability on this, like not getting enough views on this,
and how much you're investing your personal attachment to that,
right?
And the meaning of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that it's like, it's definitely the Wild West for that, and everybody's still like guns ablazing trying to figure out how the fuck to do that. Some people, there's clear cases, and I think they're usually clearer for TikTok and Vine and Twitter, I would say, and Instagram, maybe, I don't know. All of them.
Right.
That it's clear that everyone's fucked up. No.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably a hierarchy, and it would take a considerable time to, I think, make those distinctions, maybe, because there's so many things. I mean, while I think Facebook has some of the potential to have some of the most genuine interactions, I've probably seen the most catastrophic ones on there too. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint, but they're not as consistently nauseating as they are for Twitter. For me personally, when I go on Twitter, I just see more things that make me sad than I do that make me laugh. And they're usually, it's kind of like either a funny meme or a fucked up, weird, self-deprecating or
which is just meme. Like, that's just meme culture now.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's that, and people just really speak in their mind. And that's what makes me uncomfortable, is that people think that speaking your mind in that way, like it's not this like speak your mind because you're confident in it and you're open to talking about it with people. It's like speak your mind and fuck off. And I just can't get behind that. It makes me sad to see things like that. And if I constantly see that, it makes me like, I don't know. It's not that I don't want to be condescending towards those people, because I think there is I think their feelings are valid. I just don't think that's the way you approach it. I don't think you're doing anything to help it. You're making it worse when
Right.
when you go to Twitter for it. And Instagram, you have the problem of people puffing their chests out, like trying to see, like put their life on steroids. But there's also, I think there's more genuineness in Instagram too for me, because I think people are getting to the point, most people get to the point where they see that that's a thing, and they'll admit that, my Instagram doesn't reflect my whole life. There's a lot of like dark parts to it, even if I'm not expressing them on here. You don't want to, I don't think just because that's why it gets kind of cheesy to me when people do get on Instagram and are like talking about their problems too in depth, or at least when they're starting the post. It's one thing to put like a deep personal thought on there. Like I can get behind that. But when you open it with I don't know, it's kind of, I'm kind of a hypocrite here, because I think talking on a podcast is different and more genuine, because you're willing to be vulnerable with someone and talk about it, rather than trying to just put it out in the world and see how many likes you can get on it. It's not about that when you're podcasting, and it doesn't have to be about that when you're on Instagram either. But if you're going to start the post with, everybody spends so much time never putting their like true self on Instagram or like on these social media platforms, so me doing it is overcoming that stereotype or that unhealthy thing. It's like you're saying, you're still being a part of it. I don't think you can truly escape it, but the closest you come to it is accepting it and just be yourself all the time. I don't think one post, because that kind of like, when you do something like that, it invalidates all of the other posts you made too, doesn't it? Like, it's like, here, this is the one genuine post I've made, because everybody's usually like, all of you are fake because you're posting shit all the time, just showing how good your life is, and you're not willing to open up about how shitty it actually is. And in reality, nobody's life is that good or that shitty. It's a blend of both. But it becomes troublesome. I mean, I'm not, if I'm on Instagram, I'm not just going to walk up to people, or if I'm out in public, I'm not going to walk up to you and be like, you see this outfit? I'm wearing this because I like this. It makes me feel confident. It makes me feel good, but my life is a fucking nightmare. Like, you don't want to burden people with that. It doesn't make any sense. It's a waste of time when you're just going about casually interacting with people. So I think you do kind of just have to, if you're going to be a part of it, just go with the flow, do things that feel reflective of yourself. And if that means sharing something that fucked up that happened to you, there's been plenty of posts like that to where I'm like, like I have someone that I went to high school with that lost their boyfriend. I don't know how they passed away, but they were like madly in love. And a big part of coping with it for her was being active on Facebook and like communicating with people and posting about it. And there was a level that was something to me that was very touching, because I was like, look at this, like people are gathering together, they're supporting her, she's reaching out, she's not doing it clearly not, I mean, she might be doing it for the attention, but it's like warranted attention. It's not like, look at me, look how hard my life is. It's like, hey, I'm going through this now. I know like usually my stuff is more positive, and like that is part of my life, and I love those parts of my life. But right now I'm going through something very hard, and I want to share that experience so I can help other people know what it's like to go through it, and in return get help from people like that. That's the beauty of it for me right there. I think that's how you have a deep life experience. And you don't have to do that. I'm not saying like if you lose someone in your life, you should go onto social media. For a lot of people that wouldn't work, but I think that's how I feel. But on those, so I think you can make a hierarchy, and I think at the bottom of potential is TikTok. I will agree with you there, but I do have to push back in defense for some of my TikTok and friends, and I probably have like 10 of them, but 9 of them I think kind of are willing to go, I know it's stupid, but I like it, And for most people, if that's the case, people who are critical of it, you're like, okay, whatever.
You can forgive it a little bit.
Yeah, you can agree to disagree. It's like, okay, well, it's then you're saying it's a waste of time. But I think to them, they're still defending that it's not a total waste of time. They just know it's kind of, it's not really a very productive way to spend your time. But there's one of those 10 friends, and I think you know Jarman, right? Stephen Jarman.
Yes, I do.
Yes. So he has a TikTok now, and he's actually doing he's pretty successful at it so far. I think he's had it for like 6 months, and he's got like, I think like 13,000 followers or something like
Oh,
that,
wow.
maybe more. Like, he's doing pretty fucking good for being in it for that short of a period of time. And I don't think he's bought any of them. He's a pretty upfront guy and honest guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he would do that. And you could easily tell. I've looked at some of his following too, and it's usually like, he'll admit it too. He's like, it's usually like younger girls or younger boys that are usually attracted to me, that are like supporting it, which I think he
That's a whole other issue that we're not talking about because
well, it's already out there. I guess he doesn't necessarily put it like that, but I've looked at the comments and
it's like, listen, young people find me attractive.
Now it's sounding, I got to defend him even harder now because I set him up to sound like a pedophile.
Do you need a shovel? I can give you a shovel for this hole that you're digging.
Yeah, throw me in with him. No, I do see where he's coming from though, because that is like, maybe that is feeding in to, so I mean, to these people, but those are only his active people, you know, like those are the real active people, like commenting. Maybe he gets 15 comments out of the hundreds of views he gets or whatever, the thousands of views. And he's had some that have gone pretty viral that have got like 60,000 views or something like that. I think there was like two of his TikToks that did.
What kind of TikTok does he make? I gotta ask.
It's like comedic. It's like cringy comedic stuff. So he's really into like cringe humor. And I mean, it's not my cup of tea. I think I've enjoyed it more. It's weird because I have a connection to Jarman, and usually I would hate this type of thing and I would be very dismissive of it. But having him as a friend and talking about it has been kind of enlightening as to, in my mind, even if there's a limited potential for productivity of it, there is still somewhat of one. And it's as simple as it's fun and it's entertaining. And I think we do have to be careful as a society not to get so upset with how fucked up things can become because of the social media that we just become dismissive of memes entirely and the fun of them. I think there is a way to moderate it and still do to not be feeding into the shitty parts of it, that you're just taking the good parts out of it. And I think the only good part of it in TikTok is the expression of yourself and the having a good time and making someone laugh, you know? I don't mean, I haven't seen any deep, insightful TikToks, which are, I'm sure they're out there. They're on their way.
Nobody's doing Hamlet on TikTok right now. It's fine.
Not yet. We'll see though. I mean, but that's the thing is I was never really big into Vine. I would always get the Vines that I thought were funny through Facebook or Twitter.
Right.
They'd be posted on there, and then it got shut down, and I was kind of happy because when I did have Vine for a little bit, and it is the easiest, and so is TikTok in my mind. That's why I can't have it. That's why I don't have games on my phone. That's why I usually don't play video games too, is it just sucks you in so much that it's and some people more than others, that it's like so hard to pull myself out of. And I know if I lay on my bed for 2 hours and watch Vines for that long, it's going to make me depressed. It's going to it's going to be bad. And it's going to take a while to like come back from that. And especially if I build a pattern of it and keep doing it, like I can't, but for some people they can, and it doesn't affect them as much, you know, and they work really hard in other areas. Or someone like Jarman, who is like an actual participant in it and has his own, he's getting something out of it, that he's promoting himself as an artist. And I think comedy is something that he's interested in. I don't know if he's never outright said he wants to be a performer of any kind, but I think this is his avenue that he wants to, if he were going to be some sort of performer. And the fact that he got a response out of it was like, hey, this is doing something for some people. Some people find it funny. I want to keep getting that feeling of feeling like I'm helping people laugh, even if for a moment. So I think, to me, that's what it has to offer. And I have things on Instagram, a couple people I follow that are humorous to me, but not really. Like before we did this, there's a guy, let me look up what his name is. He's on Instagram, and he has like he's getting really big. He's got like 90,000 followers or something right now, which it's weird talking about these things without sounding like you're becoming obsessed with like, oh God, look how many followers he has. He's so cool.
Right.
And I don't, I mean, to some extent that is true, but what I really care about is the content and the feeling he gives me, because I can literally look at his page for 10 minutes and it make me laugh like ear to ear as if I'm watching stand-up comedy. And it's that consistent. But he's a musician too. It's his name is Mark. Let me see. Mark Rebillet. Oh, he's got like 500. He's got 500,000 followers now, so he's like really blowing up. And John Mayer follows him and likes his stuff, and
Okay.
I'm a big John Mayer fan. So it's kind of, and I have friends that are like watch his stuff too. And he basically
Mm-hmm.
just he makes his money off doing music, improv music on Instagram, where he like makes the beats live and then he improvs like these really raunchy and just stupid lyrics, but it's all off the top of his head, and it's it's always hilarious just getting these ridiculous lyrics over a beat. Like today I listened to one dude that he just uploaded, and it's like it's called I'm a Maniac. So it's like from the perspective of a crazy person, of
Oh,
this loon. And he says something, he's rapping, and he says, uh, I'm going to go to the Brooklyn Bridge, punch a hole in the bridge, cars in the water, people dying in this bitch.
oh my goodness.
It sounds like the exact thing that you would hate. But
See, it's not that I hate it or would hate it. It is, you touched on the concept of potential, right? Like the potential for these platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, like, there has to be high forms of communication and low forms of communication. Like there has to be the cell phones, video calls, Snapchats, what have you. Like you have to be able to reach people immediately now that we've evolved this technology, right? Like, and just like there has to be, because there are high forms and low forms of communication, there have to be high forms and low forms of art. And I think my biggest thing is when, my biggest thing, and this is probably like part of just after listening to you, my biggest thing is probably I'm a little bit of a prude when it comes to my low forms of art, because they have to meet at least some like similar standard of like my high forms of art. So like clever wordplay, or the ability to like, it's really all just clever wordplay when I think about it, because I was going to say like bring in double entendres or think on the fly and improvise, sort of thing. And so the concept for me of all of this is this actually like wraps back around to where we started with, how everything is like with phones, computers, radio, like all of it has converged, right? Because of the convergence of our communication in our devices, and even just the way we communicate. Like we just spent part of this conversation talking about the thing on our devices. What I want is people to see the potential for the high and the low communication and the high and the low art across the board.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what it boils down to for me, is like, I think I wrote this blog post about a year ago where it was like, I made a case for why social media acts its age. So every social media site to me acts the age. Like if you compared it to a person who is the same age as the social media site, they're acting that age. So like,
oh wow,
I think like Facebook, I forget what it puts Facebook at now. I think it's like 14 or 15 years old at this point.
That's a really great theory, story. I like that. I'll have to read that. I think I missed that one.
That's okay. I mean, it was buried in when I had way too much time and wrote too many blog posts. But like TikTok being this newer form, it popped up like, I mean, I know it was a different app, like it was Musical.ly before, and then it really like took off after that, but it popped up in like 2015-ish, where it's like, so TikTok is like 6 right now.
Wait, is it really, dude? I thought it was like 2 years old. I didn't know it's been around since. I have no idea. I never saw it before college though.
Okay, so let's go with the idea then that it's taken off over the past 2 years, right?
5 sounds mature, honestly, more mature than it deserves.
That's fair. So this is the moment where it's like, oh well, let's use this thing that we're talking about, where I can just literally pull it up and be like, how old is?
Let's use it to shit on it.
Or I can like literally use the technology in the way, like interrupt our communication, but keep talking, since that is the platform.
Yes, keep it rolling.
Yeah, keep it rolling. But like you literally use the communication, and the thing that we're kind of talking about is positive and negative.
Well, I think
Okay.
that's what's good about these conversations too, is like we're finding, I think both of us have our predispositions about it coming into this conversation,
Mhm.
and hopeful, but I mean, I'm still, although I'm certain about where I am now, I'm not certain that it's the end all be all of my feelings on it, because I haven't had like a really thorough conversation with multiple people to offer different perspectives on it and kind of reevaluate, and I think that
Right.
the benefit of having this one with you, it's someone that I like typically would agree on every point, but we're finding these nuances of where we can both push back and find like maybe an even more balanced perspective that's more appropriate. And then when we go and talk to, like, I think that's what, because when I talk to Jarman, we would we would disagree on something. We both have perceive it in a different way. It wasn't even
Mm.
that we were disagreeing about what TikTok is, because that's, at some point, I know where he stands on it and he knows where I stand on it. So it's like, well, what's the point of continuing to talk about why I think you're wrong or you think I'm wrong about whether you should invest in it or not? But
Right.
I think that the one thing in talking to him that really changed my mind, and why I do feel the need to push back against people who are just totally dismissive about it, like I was before, is that there is clearly, even if even if it is the youngest and the most immature, I think there are people who are a part of it, um, for the right reasons, and are making content that are like more. I mean, to me, the dance stuff is, that's, some people really enjoy that, and I think there should be access to that and people doing that. If
Mhm.
there's a demand, there should be access to it, I think. But if, just because there's a demand doesn't mean it's a good thing. Um,
Right.
but so I think we should continue to change the way we behave with it if we realize we're doing something that isn't very good.
Yeah.
And I think we're very slow at doing that with I mean, the fact that Facebook has, it's hard to tell whether it's gotten more beneficial or more regressive since coming out and being the first like social media. Well, I guess there's MySpace,
Mhm.
but it's dead. But so Facebook was the baby, or that
Yeah.
MySpace had. But I think that, to people like that are a part of it as a community, and I'm like, okay, I would assume that because they're so invested in it, they're probably catching more of that low quality, low art, the low quality
Mm.
lowbrow. Because I think there's a difference between low quality lowbrow and high quality lowbrow, and I think there is high
Yeah.
quality lowbrow. One of my
Yeah.
favorite comedic movies ever, is very lowbrow, but it's Dumb and Dumber. It's a very, very stupid movie. It's literally called Dumb and Dumber. But to me, the wit of it is how self-aware it is at what it's doing. What I hate
Right.
more is like Transformers, when it's trying to be like this sexy, like badass, braggadocious, like puffing your chest out. We got millions to make this
Yeah.
explosion and these cool technological gimmicks and like, things like that. I mean, there are some things that are good about Transformers to me too, but stuff like that just lacks self-awareness about what it's trying to do, what it's trying to
Mhm.
achieve, and if it's coming across that way or not. um, and I feel like something like Dumb and Dumber knows exactly what it's doing, and it's in control
Right.
the whole time, and it's getting that, it's receiving the same um, reaction as it's trying to gain. So to do that is extremely challenging and impressive. So to me, that's
Yeah.
why it's good filmmaking, and it's not like weird cuts. Like, it still feels like a cohesively shot and edited, and it's nothing incredible or pushing barriers, but it's lowbrow, but in the technical quality of it maybe, but it's very highbrow in the, or very high quality low browness
Mhm.
of, and comedically in my mind, the fact that like some of the jokes are just so funny to me, and they make me laugh harder than some like more challengingly written, like complex jokes or
Yeah.
humor, and like higher brow comedies. Um, but so I think maybe that's the benefit of some TikToks, and I think not being a part of it, it's easier to overestimate how much traffic there is of the low quality, low brownness of it,
That's tough.
compared to how you can curate it. Because I mean, that's a benefit of social media too. Is yes, you're going to get advertisements, you're going to get things suggested to you, but if you make an active effort to curate and follow things that are only really not wasting your time and not falling into the trap of wasting your time and following just stupid shit,
Mhm.
then objectively stupid shit, then I think you're going to put yourself in a position that you're not wasting as much time. To me, it's still to just watch clips and clips over and over again, even if they are funny, it's still that, to me, that's not worth my time.
Right.
But for other people, if that's the main thing they like, and I've known people that really enjoy Vine over, they'd probably rather watch 100 Vines in a day than maybe a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think you have to be careful. If you are going to accept it, you have to be conscious of how much am I escaping. That's like the new problem, because you're probably doing that in other things too. If you're not willing to pick up a book, or you're not willing to watch something dramatic to learn some history of, or think about some deeper things about human nature, then it's a problem, because then you can become very ignorant. But
Right.
I don't think it's not required of everybody to have a vast interest in learning about these things, and it's not meant for
Yeah.
everybody. I think one of the greatest things about humanity and social media and technology is our ability to become different people and excel at that and express that and enjoy it, based on what we personally like. So I see people sharing my comfort with TikTok, my comfort level with it, and the benefits is knowing these 5-10 people that are into it, and looking on their story on Instagram if they have a TikTok on there that they've shared, and seeing it there. Or like LeBron James will post, it's one of my favorite, if not favorite athletes ever,
Mm-hmm.
post stuff of him and his family in quarantine, like dancing and stuff, and making little
Right.
dance videos. And I can only watch so many of those. I've seen one, and they probably made like 10. And I usually skip them because I saw it and that was the effect I was looking for, and why I participated is because I was like, I love this athlete. He's been inspirational to me in my lifetime. And it's cool to see him using this time of struggle to reconnect with his family a little more. So
Right.
it clicked with me on that level. And I tend to think about these things a little deeper too. So I think it's important that I think that way of like, what am I
Mm-hmm.
getting out of this with LeBron James dancing with his kids?
Right. It kind of goes back to the idea that like you're taking this pedestal, this individual who's put on a pedestal, and because of technology, you're able to be like, well, they're human,
Mm-hmm.
and because they're human, they get this moment that the rest of us kind of take for granted until a moment like this anyway. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to see them sharing that and having the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. I'm not a TikTok user. Worked at a summer camp over last summer, and the kids thought it was hilarious that I did not know how to hit the woe, and they taught me how to hit the woe, and I still cannot do it very well. Uh,
I don't even know what the
but
woe is.
it's they said, imagine
You
that
hit the
you're using a steering wheel with your left hand, and then suddenly you have to catch
Oh,
something with your right hand
yeah,
over it.
dude.
And so
I've
it's
been,
like,
yeah, I see Sule do that a lot. He came on the podcast, and I met him on a set, and then I think I went to some like I can't remember where I saw him do it, or if he posted a video or something. No, that's what it was. He was doing like a freestyle on set, and he was kind of dancing along, and he was
mhm,
like, or he's listening to music too. I think he was listening like Lil Uzi or something. And I saw him do that. That was like one of the first times I ever saw someone do it. And then I just saw it on the internet all the time
yeah,
after that. I saw the basketball players at Wright State, because I filmed the games before everything got shut
oh
down.
yeah,
They would all do that in their like circle of getting pumped up for the game. They'd all have like music and be doing
yeah.
that.
And
That's
it's one of
fine.
those things where it's like the great stuff that all of this advancement in technology and being able to communicate has brought us, because now communication is not just let's have a conversation or let's send a letter or
Mm.
one-on-one. Now communication is like across the board spread. It's like we were talking about in our little test that we did before this, where it's like you get into a Zoom, like we're Zooming right now, you get into a Zoom class, and
Right.
like there's all the people around your screen and you can like see that sort of thing. So like technology has really been able to bring us together in groups in ways that we've kind of dispersed from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also one of those things where back to like, if you look at it in a, if people create for technology or communicate in this bubble of technology, that's when I find it to be the most detrimental. And because again, it all goes back to, actions, words have consequences. And in the theory that I have with social media sites being their age, which I looked it up, TikTok was launched in 2017. So it's about
Okay.
3 right now.
Okay.
So if you think about a 3-year-old, You've just left the terrible twos. So we just like participated in TikTok, running around the house screaming and being in our face all the time and not really knowing how to behave. And now it's like, okay, it's got its feet under it. It can use a pretty, fair vocabulary when it's like developed well. It has an awareness of object permanency, but it still doesn't understand like social and long-lasting ramifications of actions. Like you're still having to teach like the accountability. This is when you teach 3 years old is when you start teaching like the apologize, sorry, thank you, yes, no, like please. It's really when all of that stuff, and you're not just teaching it, but it's like starting to ingrain. And but also it's like the era of repeat back what is being said. And so like TikTok is currently in that bubble of like, oh, here's this dance that I watch these influencers do, which you do not want to get me started on influencers. Just a heads up, that I just watch these influencers do, and now I'm gonna do it with my family, and because like I'm repeating back what I just saw, because that's what this app is about right now, is repeating back what you just saw. Like, and so it's and it's intriguing to see, like it'll be intriguing to see where it goes, but right now I'm like, just like I don't want a 3-year-old. I don't want to like be in this realm where it's like where it's still finding its feet. I think because of my age and like when all this stuff developed, I jumped on board to like Facebook and Twitter when it was like 4 or 5 years in. At Facebook more than that, but Twitter like 4 or 5 years in. Instagram I was probably like 4 or 5 years in, where it's like, okay, and maybe this just goes to the problem that I have. Maybe this is all just me projecting the problems I have like talking to children, but like it's like then it's like, okay, now I know how, like now you're a person and you understand being a person a little bit. And so I can communicate with you effectively. It's the same way that I feel about social media, where it's like, okay, you found your feet, you found your footing, you know what you're about. How can I then, as someone who didn't understand like everything that it started out as, how can I then be like, okay, well, here's what I can bring to this app, this experience. And as I say that, I'm like, man, that is such a like bougie ass perception of myself, thinking that I have any sort of like high ground to stand on, where it's like, well, now I need to bring myself or my art, but that's also a thing that technology has done to us. You have a thought?
Well, I have that same feeling all the time when I think about myself being critical in that way. But I think the fact that you just took the time and had the thoughtfulness to think that through and to preface everything, or to preface now what does it have to offer me? What do I have to offer it? There's all of these things all these things going on, acting on anyone who participates. How do I navigate it? The fact that you're navigating it and not just like kind of going one way or the other. You're not trying to virtue signal and just base your entire beliefs off what someone's told you.
Right.
That to me is like, I think you reach a level once that you put in that time, you've earned the ability to take that higher ground or to not. So I think there's not really, to me, it's not arrogant or self-serving, I guess, or arrogant was better. Yeah, it's not arrogant to think that you were capable of doing that. I think you're already, because you're addressing the bad parts that will probably be a result, or can be a result of participating in it, and you might fall into that trap here and there and have to get yourself out. But you have a goal of how you want to use it. To me, that's like you're actively participating. You're not just a slave to it. And that's the only way you can be confident in yourself if you are trying to be on a higher ground. You're not bullshitting it. I think the bigger problem when people think they have a higher ground on something, or the ability to gain control, is when they haven't prepared for it at all. And clearly, I do think that we are thinking of it in that way. So we have the ability to put ourselves on that. And I think anybody can get access to that, but everyone's subject to the criticism of other people. You don't have to listen. You can't listen to everybody, but you have to. I think anyone who's interested in defending something like that should be interested in at least hearing someone out to find out what their intention is for talking about it.
Right.
And if someone who was like a huge supporter of TikTok or any of these social media platforms wanted to talk to us about it, and we're willing to, I think their willingness to do that would be a sign that they're not just someone who's gonna comment fuck you and like you're just a hater and like you're just a contrarian trying to act like you're above everything and everyone and like you have
Right.
you think you're better and smarter than everyone. I don't think, I mean, if you're willing to, if you're not willing to talk to people but you're willing to like put that badge on somebody, that badge of shame on someone, then you're not like as passionate as you should be about the subject, because
Right.
you should be wanting to change their mind if you really care about
Mhm.
the support of it. I think that you can't just claim to think you're right if you're not going to talk it through with somebody
Right.
that disagrees with you. So the fact that we're willing to do that, and most people, I really don't interact with anybody who I haven't found myself. You kind of create a force field around yourself when you have that philosophy, though, because
Mhm.
I've barely interacted with TikTok, but all of my interactions with it have been positive that I know of. I mean, I'm sure I've seen a couple TikToks like I didn't mean to and like should have skipped over and was like, but the people I know TikToking
Yeah.
and sharing them, so there's most every conversation and experience with a video has felt warranted to me and has felt like a good positive experience. It hasn't just been like me talking to someone who's a big TikToker and they just shut me down because they're like, "Oh, you're not into TikTok. Like you're a contrarian.
Right.
You think your head's too big." So luckily, that hasn't been the experience. Otherwise, because when you do stuff like that, if we did that and if they did that, then everyone's just going to put their head deeper into the ground, and we're not
Right.
going to. It's not going to be able to grow up. I think one of the things that's important about your theory there with them acting their age is that implies that because Facebook's been around the longest, it's had a lot of time to grow up and to
Mhm.
have more advancements. And it's probably had some other issues that have arisen too. And it's like, it's hard to say. I mean, I guess you can ask parents. They'd probably say a teenager is maybe harder than a toddler, but it probably depends on the parent. Some parents, and it depends on the kid too and what you've done. Some kids get
Right.
easier to raise, some get harder, and all of them are going to have problems. But I think that's what you have to evaluate is what is best for you,
Mhm.
what you're best with dealing at, and like what the problems are that you're facing and how they're changing through time. And TikTok is perfect. I think 3 sounds so appropriate because now,
Right.
like, it's weird how closely it is too. Because like you were saying, they have verbal cues that they're just repeating things, and that is a lot of TikTok. I'd say 80% of the TikToks I've seen at this point aren't original. And
Right.
I mean, that's probably not true if you actually are on TikTok, but it's true of my
Mhm.
experience. So that says something, like it's
Things that
probably
spread
predominantly that.
out.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
fact that the thing that's reaching most people are these like reenactments of dances and shit. It's
Yeah.
clearly like a big portion of what that platform is. And
Right.
as it's getting older, I do think it is getting better. And you're getting skits, you're getting some funny skits and
Mhm.
things like that. And it's kind of going around, it's going along the lines of Instagram, of how that operates, but it's more like videos now. It's video
Right.
posting, and it's getting that same diversity that it has. And I know, like, that, for example, the thing that I told you about of that guy, it's like that would be, he's kind of somewhere in the middle of lowbrow and highbrow for me because his lyrics are very lowbrow. Obviously, punching the
Right.
Brooklyn Bridge and killing everybody is it's pretty fucking on the nose. But the music he makes is extremely complex, and it's like
Mhm.
EDM and like some of it's like hip hop, and like I could easily see this guy getting famous for doing these videos and then being able to produce for higher end artists
Right.
and buying his music and stuff. I could totally see that because he's clearly a very talented musician too. He's a talent. I'd say he's a comedian too, and I think there is talent in, even if those are generic things he's saying. There's the fact that it's making me laugh so hard. He's improving it and doing it while mixing all this music and shit is, it's pretty incredible. So it for me personally, it reaches that level of quality to where I'm like, this is worth my time, a certain amount of my time that I have to monitor.
Yeah.
And it could easily, I'm not just going to sit all day for hours looking at his videos. That would be a bit much,
Right.
but maybe one every other day or something, or a few once a week is it's effective and it's good. I'm enjoying it. But I think, yeah, like I really I can't wait to read the blog you wrote on that, honestly, because it's definitely making me think, and it seems very accurate to how these social media platforms are aging. They are like children in a way.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I hope you read it. Hopefully it's not too outdated. I think I wrote it about March of last year,
Okay.
I think. So you
I'm
might
sure.
have to scroll a little bit, but
Okay.
hopefully it's still relevant. At the end of it, I did say I was going to take a break from social media, and that lasted about a month. Because then I was writing blog posts and nobody was looking at them, and I was like, yeah, I got to post them.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of worried about with this is, I mean, I'm not even worried is one thing. I'm not expecting, at this point, the listening or the audience for this show is like it's pretty stagnant. It's not necessarily growing. I think I'm going to have to figure out what to do if I want to grow that, but I'm not terribly concerned with it either. Cause this is what I'm doing it for, is to have this communication, whether people, that's my favorite part of it, is I get to talk to people I usually wouldn't talk to, or catch up with an old friend and
Right.
talk about topics that really are interesting to me. And that's like why I started, is because I've found that I am someone who's very deeply interested in having conversations and long form conversations, and especially one-on-one. I'm much better talking with people and being myself, being comfortable in my skin when I'm talking to someone one-on-one, whether it's a close person I'm close with or a stranger,
Right.
than I am with like a group of people that I don't know or even do know. It's like,
Yeah.
so I, knowing that's how I am and what I have to offer, I think it's like I'm perfect. It's this perfect idea for me to start a podcast, because I'll get to do something I'm more comfortable and interested in doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does push me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways too. Like anything new, but
Yeah, there's still challenges
yeah, no doubt.
to the form, but
Yeah, especially because it's kind of hard not to feel like, especially at first, that it is like a group conversation where
right.
it feels like someone's going to see it. So you at some points you're like trying to be careful with your words, or maybe a
Right.
joke or something like that, or you're worried that you said something that might come off the wrong way. But I think that's what podcasts are great for too, is it gives you the ability to do that and be forgiven for it. Like, I'm sure there's shit I've said on here before that it's not right or was offensive to somebody, and whether it was actually
Right.
offensive or not is up for debate. But I think the fact that you, on a podcast, that it's an open conversation, you have the freedom to fuck up, usually when you're talking to someone.
Right.
And the ability to call people out and not have it be like a weird attention seeking thing. It's not like tweeting someone back to be like, try and stir the pot, or
Right.
or to get the pitchforks out and start a mob. It's easier to be, since you're already in this genuine flow of things, you can it's like in a conversation with someone that you are that you're close with, where you have to call them out on something or tell them maybe that wasn't the best way of doing it. You can do that because you're in an environment where there's not attention, which hopefully, I mean, there's plenty of relationships you can't do that in, where you can't call each other out and stuff. But yeah, dude, it's interesting. All of these platforms are it's wild. It's a revolution. It really is.
Yeah. And you can't, clearly, with where we've gone in this conversation, you can't talk about the way that everything's evolved without bringing it into the fact that everything has evolved into everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
it's all merged.
We started over here, and now we've been on social media. And it's like, this is both the beauty and the terror for me of the question that we're kind of talking about, of like, where do we go next? And I don't know the answer, but it's going to be intriguing to like try and process and formulate these opinions, because I think the reason that it takes so much, like even just this conversation has like changed my view slightly on TikTok, where it's like, okay, I wasn't processing that because I don't think I was ready for that, because none of us are really ready for this. Like in this weird way, we're all still sitting in this like, well, we didn't go slow enough. It's the way I view politics, which I'm not trying to get into a whole conversation. I can feel that we're winding down a little bit, but like it's the way I view politics, which is even if you want an extreme change, like even if personally inside you're like, I want this extreme change or that extreme change, the best way to move toward a change or move toward progress in politics or in, media or um, any sort of communication is incremental, like step by step, even though it's not great. Do I think that there should be bigger jumps? Absolutely. But if you're trying to get everybody comfortable with an idea, you got to move slowly. Like you got to move in increments. And I think that's what is the biggest takeaway from me with the way that we've adapted to using social media and technology to communicate is it's just been a sweep. It's just been a tsunami. Like there's no increments. So
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. That's a really good comparison. And we got it. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to, I think one benefit now that I feel like we've fully merged and we realize most people can understand, even if you're not personally interested, in like which one should be valued more or whatnot. You have all these platforms, they're all merged together. A lot of the technology and the way we're interacting and what the potential is. I mean, it varies, I think, because there are nuances to podcasts and to Instagram and to Twitter and to Facebook and everything that you can interact with people on online through. But at the end of I think we've reached a point where it's as fully merged as it can be for a while until there's like a new device or a new thing that further integrates us together, which I'll get to in a minute because there is something coming that I've heard of. But that would be before it's commercialized. I would imagine it would be probably at least 5 years before it's like something that everyone can access. So I think we have this tsunami that happened. And we were trying to figure out how to get the reins on it and to work it for the greatest benefit of everybody, like you do in politics, like you're saying, and that we've kind of, which politics usually don't have, is a constant tsunami that we're trying to surf, and we're just usually not. But I think the advantage here with technology right now is we've reached this point where everything's kind of culminated that we can try and take some time to navigate it. It's going to stay this way at least for a couple years. You might get a new TikTok, you might get another social media platform. I mean, there's so many out there that I don't even interact with or use. I mean, some people use Pinterest like fucking social media, or they use Tumblr, I think is one, which I literally know nothing about. Reddit, that's a big one that I know has a huge audience, but that I usually, I will go to Reddit if I Google things a lot of times, like exactly. Posts, but I don't have Reddit anymore. So there's all these things. There's probably going to be a new one, but I think it's going to have to fit. It's going to be, if there's something new happens, it's going to be something that merges into what's already existing. It's going to just like be thrown into the stew rather than it be a new stew itself. But the new stew could be what's called Neuralink. Have you heard of that?
Neuralink, is that like the idea of like being implanting something into your brain?
It's not necessarily your brain, but it connects to your brain somehow. I literally don't know the science. I'm sure he explained it, but it's one of the like 10 companies that Elon Musk owns, and he was talking about it when he was on Rogan's show, and it's basically this contact lens that when you put it in, that it's not like to improve your sight or anything, but it will literally upload your brain to the internet somehow. Nope. Yep. But that's what's crazy, dude, is I have the same, to me, it adds to my fear and my excitement at the same time. But I think it more so adds to the fear because it could be that out of everything we've had. I mean, but it's debatable because we romanticize the idea of what big data does and like having these and the effects of having these phones. That's the thing that scares me the most, even beyond like social media and stuff, is the wealth that can be gained from being at the top of the food chain here, and how much you control stuff, whether it's advertisements or really advertisements and programming people to see certain things based on the data that they've gathered for you to reflect who you should think they are and who you can form them to be. Like that's freaky to me, and that already exists. So to me, Neuralink is, yes, it's another step that's going to really change that, but is it going to really change it that much more? Aren't we already kind of in this huge gap of which we need to fix? That's one of the issues we're facing, and that's something we need to take the time to. But it's hard for me as a common person to understand, a common person who's actively interested in trying to learn about these things and participate them with like an open mind and a critical view, or a skeptical one at least, that like there's so many, it's very exciting in some ways. It makes me like, I want to pop that shit in right now and start thinking. And he's claiming that it's going to make cognitive superhumans out of all of us, and he wants everyone to have access to it. But there's got to be some curve to it. I mean, there's a curve with Teslas. Not everybody's driving a self-driving car right now for a very good reason.
Right. I feel like it's going to make cognitive robots out of all of us.
I mean, some people already say we are. There's the cyborg theory gets a lot of people like to apply that, because like this, the fact that it's the fact that we can still separate from it doesn't account for how intense of a connection it is to have this attached to your body, and how frequently it is doing that. And that is, we're clearly, like, the more time goes on, we're finding ways to make it more attached to us. So I think it's only that is the next step to me, is where we do like full cyborg it. And I mean, you can still take the contact lens out, but why would you at that point? And what happens? What if we get like LASIK surgery? I don't know how there's probably, I'm sure scientists could break down why that's not logical and wouldn't work, but I don't know what science is as to how does putting my contact lens make my eyes look like I can see clearer. I don't really know the exact science behind that, other than it's like a lens that has a different focal length to it and ability to do that, like the way the lens is shaped and crafted. But other than that, I mean, there's deeper science to that, and that would sound just as ridiculous as someone who'd never had a contact lens before. So or so you can conceive, though, even if you haven't.
I can conceive,
but it is probably more of a mystery to someone like you who hasn't had it. You're like, what is that? Why do you do that? Why, or how can you put that?
How do you wake up and just not see? Like, I don't get.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. It's strange, but it's not really anymore. It's very normal, but it would be bizarre to me if I lived in an era where there weren't contact lenses, where it was only glasses. And if I weren't in an age of glasses, it would be like, what the fuck? How are glasses working?
Right.
Clearly there's a science behind it, and it's probably more basic behind that. The fact that I can conceive that it's something to do with the lenses, that is clarifying it. I just don't understand, how is it directly uploading you to the internet? It's not like your thoughts get posted, like you're going to think something and it pops automatically on Facebook. You're like, oh shit, didn't mean to post that. But there will be instances of that. It's going to be so attached to you that you can think it's basically, the way he describes it is that the contact lens will project something in front of you, like a screen, like you were saying, with like holding a hologram or something, that it projects that hologram using that, and that it's connected to the internet somehow, that you can control it like you would typing with your fingers. Rather, it's either voice activated, or it's going somehow to be, I mean, there's still plenty of things that need to be, I'm sure, explained with it that he might not have gone in depth with. But the point is you can think and research something, and that you could think and like read a book. Like shit like that just sounds, it's crazy. It's going to change the way we think. It's going to make everybody drastically more intelligent or unintelligent, depending on how they use it.
See, that's when I'm like, all right, the virus can have me.
Yeah.
You can take me now, it's fine.
Yeah, man. I see it that way too, but but I also don't know. I mean, I think I would probably, if I would try it, and then if I didn't like it, I would stop.
That's fair.
But there is like, there's a potential threat to doing that, of falling behind. There's a potential advantage to doing that too. But because at some level, the creators of the world are moving its existence forward in the way and the way we interact. So you're either going to get on or get left behind. And as I get older, I want to make sure like I'm doing it for the right reasons, and not just because I'm afraid. Because it could turn out to be Yeah, because that's the thing is like if you want to combat the issues of it, you have to interact with it
Right.
in a good way. Like me giving up Facebook doesn't help any of the problems that are on Facebook.
Yeah.
So and if I want to be someone that does contribute, which I view myself as someone that has that for whatever reason was born with or accumulated a interest in doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be crazy though. It blew my mind. That was probably one of the most mind-blowing podcasts I had ever heard, was listening to him talk about that. Just shows like and things like the coronavirus too. It's a reminder that no matter how stable your life seems because of the routine you're in, things are constantly changing, and there are things that are changing that could affect your life when you
Right.
wake up the next day. And you
And
usually
you have no idea.
yeah, you have no idea. Usually you think that it's things that you're doing, that you're
Exactly.
taking from the world and reacting to, that are going to affect the way you wake up the next day. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not how it always works, and it's something else. I'm sorry I told you. I was hoping.
It's okay.
I think I scared you more than I made you excited. But I hope you're at least.
I don't think I'm scared so much as just like now I got I like to leave conversations having something that I need to look into. So thank you for that, because now I got to look into this. But like,
Definitely.
it's one of those things that just, I didn't fathom that. It makes too much sense that would be like the next kind of step.
Yep. How can we attach it to ourselves more?
Yeah, because it's all about convenience. Everything in the world is about convenience. That's why technology has adapted the way it has.
Yep.
And that's why we haven't been focused on other areas. We've just really been focused on communication, to tie back into that point. Like,
yeah, it all does. Yeah, it's anything that can make that more efficient and like make us, because everybody, I mean, no matter how interested you are, no matter how vast your interest exists or like how vast the pool of your interest is, everyone is interested in something, especially in this age. The stupidest person alive right now is astronomically smarter than the dumbest, or than the smartest person 100 years, 200, 300 years ago, right? They have the fact that they can, or at least they have the ability to be. Maybe they're not.
Right.
Not everyone, probably not the smartest person here. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but definitely the stupidest person alive now is probably smarter than the average person 100 or 200 years ago.
Right.
I think that much is probably true. And I think most of that has to do with technology and the fact that even if they were quote unquote stupid in the world they're living in, they still have a base access to the same things that they have to even survive. You have to know how to use some things, like some forms of technology. And that to me is just is further evidence that it's that everybody craves knowledge to some capacity, and some more than others, and we have to do that. We have to continue that craving to survive, but we also have to monitor how obsessed we are, because we could easily destroy ourselves on the quest for more knowledge
in an instant.
Yeah, experiments don't always go the right way.
Right.
We've definitely discovered that. It blows my mind that someone like Einstein, like for him, someone who was like just a seemingly harmless scientist just trying to further our understanding of the world, he wasn't studying atoms to figure out if they were going to explode when you split it. He was studying these things to figure out what the fabric of our existence is, and to help us better understand how to manipulate it and to help us. And it was an accidental result that when he was studying them, that he was like, oh, well, you can split it. So what does that do? And it fucking creates an atomic bomb. Like and then someone else used that knowledge in a very destructive way. So I think that's obviously something people have to be wary of when we have these experiments, is how much, what is, and if you do make a discovery that is potentially catastrophic, you have to dial it back. And it's hard to make those discoveries in a time where the power imbalance is still so prevalent that it's like there's going to be setbacks, and it's going to be hard to measure it. So that's what freaks me out about AI, and that freaks me out about eugenics and
Right.
Neuralink and stuff, which could be, dude, that would be, I don't know how interested you are in those topics, but I would love to do an episode on those things. And
I'd have to do more research, but
okay, hell
I'd
yeah.
be
Well,
interested in talking
don't
about
feel obligated. If you do, if that's something, well, if you're looking at neuroscience, I'm sure that's going to get you interested
Right.
into more of the, how we're becoming more like cyborgs. And that to me is very, very interesting, because I think eventually there's based on the history of what we've been doing as humans, we are clearly moving in a direction that is unifying us closer and closer to being more, at least part machine. And
Right.
I think there are plenty of scenarios where that can be a good thing, but I think the most essential thing is timing and the ethical nature of the world we're living in, and how much we've pinpointed like a solid foundation for ethics. And we're still pretty far from that balance. So that's why I'm like, hold off on AI. That's what, as exciting as it would be to have Neuralink, I'm also like, let's hold off on that for a while too, or at least take a lot of time after it's made to limit who has access to selling it, to manufacturing it, and do tons and tons of tests, and to make sure that there's not. But that's the thing, is even before it's made, like, you can think of scenarios where someone with power could abuse it.
Right.
So I don't know if there's ever a scenario. That's why I'm like that with AI, is why I don't think you should I don't think if you could recreate something that can argue its own consciousness, why would you do that before you can even pinpoint and healthily experience your own consciousness? We still face so many problems of our own consciousness that we can't pinpoint and overcome, that it just sounds like a disaster to me to jump the gun and make AI that might be able to think for itself. But there's also the argument that we're so far away from that. Even if we did, the AI we have right now is so, I mean, as much as it is more complex than other AI, it's still very much within our control. It's not going to claim consciousness. And we don't have true AI, I don't think. Nothing passes the Turing test yet that I know of. I think some things have come close, like some of these talking robots, but they're still all programmed. That's a step towards the direction of like, okay, when have you programmed them so much that they can program themselves, or they can even claim that their programming is an individual experience of their own, and we're their gods or something. There's just so much. And I think it's not worth the risk. There's too many risks. And I think we're at a good place right now that we can just kind of stay here for a bit and fix the bugs that exist within the system now.
We could figure out how people are going to start using TikTok. Like,
yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, let's start there. That's safer.
Yeah, dude. If we're the species struggling with how to use TikTok correctly, then I think we're probably not the species to be recreating ourselves right now.
Exactly.
Their TikTok could be a lot worse for us. Right on, dude. Well, this has been a really interesting. I don't even know how long we've been going. It's been at least an hour or so. If not a little more. I think it might have been like an hour and a half. These have been going on a bit. The last 2 episodes I did were 3 hours.
Oh wow.
One of them on purpose, one on accident. I haven't released either of them yet, but I think I'm going to release them as like 3 parts each.
That's
especially
a good call.
One of them was about 3 different things, so it'll work. But
yeah,
I've kind of let them grow to at least be an hour. Is that what you were doing with your show?
Yeah, with my show, which I'm going to be bringing back here soon.
Nice. I saw you posted an episode recently.
Yeah, it was just kind of a stand-up thing that I had recorded. I had it in the vault and I meant to release it, but with my show, I had been editing it down to an hour to about an hour, and then I was just losing so much that I then started letting it just kind of run for a full thing instead of piecing it out, and that was harder for people to digest. So as I'm bringing it back, what I'm going to be doing actually is I'm going to be setting a time limit with each guest, like up front, like how long can we talk, and setting a countdown as opposed to a timer counting up. And basically just as soon as that goes off, then it's like, well, we can't solve all the world's problems, but we took a moment and
I like that.
that's it. Yeah. So
That's great. That's a great idea, especially if I think, yeah, especially when they're like newer. It's a newer thing, and you don't have
yeah,
something. I was always saying when I started this to people I talked with is I want to keep it to like even 20 to 40. That's clearly gotten, it's usually like 40 to an hour now, which I'm fine
right,
with. I think that seemed 20 to 40 was a little harder to swing because it just felt like you were really getting into it around that mark, at least like 20. Sometimes
yeah,
30 to 40 was working, and I'm open to that. But I am a talker, so now they're naturally, the fact that I opened up to that they have gotten longer. I'm trying to reel it
right.
in a little bit, but I do that's a great idea if you do want to control it and be like more, um, um, what's the word? More strict about the length, is to have a
Yeah,
timer counting down, because then it's like if you shoot for 30 or 40, you get into like the 37th minute, and you're like, okay, we're wrapping it up. We're able to be done in a few minutes, but then you're like, you realize there's another thing to talk about, and you're like, oh, well, let's get to that.
right.
So it is about, yeah, you got to find that balance. But
Hmm.
I think I'm going to try and keep it at an hour now, because I
Okay.
was getting feedback too that people were saying like, hey, like it's cool, and I understand why you're doing it for 30 minutes, but the people that are listening, and those are who really matter, are the are open and want to listen for longer. So I was like, okay,
Right.
if they felt like it could go another 20 minutes and they would be interested in, and it would feel a little more complete, and like it went to the depth that it needed to go to for them to
Yeah.
um, get more out of it. Not that they weren't getting anything out of it, but they wanted more. And I think that's a good sign. That made me feel good. And I was like, okay, let's do an
Yeah.
hour then. But 3 hours is a little much.
They're like, okay, slow
At
down.
this stage.
This isn't what we meant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, oh,
I
you
get
want
that.
more? Okay, let's do a 12-day podcast. We'll just go. I'm gonna I'm just gonna do a bunch of drugs to keep ourselves alive, and
Or 8 hours of it is just you listening to me sleep, and then
yeah,
every day.
we'll take turns getting each other food, and that person will just have to keep the ball rolling by themselves.
Oh Lord,
But
that's
heck
gonna
yeah,
be
dude.
fun to
Well,
think
go,
about.
go ahead and give yourself a shout out here. I didn't introduce you in the beginning. We just got the
Oh, that's
ball
perfectly
rolling.
fine.
I will in
Um,
the post, so they'll know who you are.
okay. I mean, yeah, I have. Let's see. You can find me. I've got probably Facebook would be the easiest way to find me. You can search the real Sawyer AS. That's what I'm going by professionally now, as Sawyer AS. Um, I am on Facebook. I have that same handle on Instagram, not on Twitter. Uh, I have a YouTube channel, but nothing's on it. So like, there's nothing. But I am actually starting up because of everything that's happening right now. I'm starting up a project where it's basically a pay what you want project, but I'll be releasing some of my work just day by day, letting people see different things that I've been doing, different projects I've been working on and had in the works. So, and then I do the Pause for Effect podcast, which has, I think, currently 12 episodes out. They're very sporadic, but I'm going to be bringing that back. If not starting this week, then the following week. I'm not sure when you're going to air this particular podcast, but by the time this is up, I assume that people will be able to tune in and listen to that. And you've been a guest on it, and I think that was my longest episode, so they can hear us talk about how you were a beekeeper. I just listened to it the other day, and some inappropriate ideas for films, and
Oh yeah.
our take on the Me Too movement. So
Yes. Yeah, dude.
yeah.
That was a great conversation. You popped my podcasting cherry, so I
Oh
appreciate that.
God, when you say it like that, it's like we were just talking about Me Too stuff, man. Like I just mentioned it.
I'm a
Yeah.
master of timing.
No, yes, you are. You got that. You got that one just right.
Oh God. But no, I do appreciate being on there. Like that was because I'd always wanted to be on the podcast and wanted to do
Mhm.
podcasts, and I do definitely, I think I've gotten over it for the most part. It's harder when I'm talking to a stranger. But I'm comfortable enough to like get over it in like a minute, I think, usually, of the jitters of talking to someone and kind of being
Right.
anxious about getting the ball rolling, and
Hmm.
making them comfortable and staying comfortable, all that. So the overthink, the needless overthinking, but
Yeah.
natural nonetheless. Um, that was always kind of what held me back from doing one,
Hmm.
as much as I knew I loved to talk and thought like in conversations I would have with people were pretty interesting. And that was so that was the first time I did it. It made me realize like I can do it, and I greatly appreciate that. And I would love to go on again
Yeah,
whenever you want.
absolutely. I love being on this, and I'm glad you started doing this because I'm total honesty, haven't gotten to listen to a lot of it, but what I've listened to, I've really enjoyed. So
Nice, awesome, dude.
yeah,
Well, I appreciate it. Oh
and
yeah,
I like this conversation.
yeah,
Challenged
that's a
me,
good one.
made me think about some things that aren't in my realm. Like I said, I'm not a scientist, so
Uh-huh.
like I still can't answer the question specifically, but I'm gonna probably like message you later and be like, so I googled it, and this is why phones are so big.
Yes,
But
please do. That'll help
yeah,
educate both of us because that was something that just made me realize I had no idea of how that really works, and that's really interesting stuff. And I'm glad I've wanted to do something on technology for a while,
hmm
and because you can go in so many different directions with it. But I
right,
feel like we definitely covered a lot, and
hmm
we each got to talk about things we're both interested in, and both connect over, and
yeah.
also learn a few things both that are confusing, scary, exciting, all that good stuff. So
And you scared the shit out of me with
I'm
the.
sorry.
It's okay. You're good.
Hey, I'm sure if it's that scary by that point when it exists, there's going to be a complex enough VR that you can be one of the people that just signs off and goes into the VR world.
Goes into the VR world.
You won't have to deal with Neuralink if you don't want to.
Great. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Right on, dude. Well, until next time, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. I can't wait to release this one.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me.
For sure, dude. I'm going to stop the recording, man. I wonder how I'm going to edit this.